Welcome back, sports fans, to the Super Bowl edition of the Steel Scorpion Sports Podcast. Coming at you live from San Diego, I'm Jeff Miller.
And from San Jose, I'm Mark Heflin.
That's right, Mark. Live on the Monday after the Super Bowl, and what a game it was. An exciting Patriots win, goes right down to the final 30 seconds of the game with a goal line interception. Excitement all throughout, great play from both teams. Really interesting game, I thought. Any initial thoughts from you?
Yeah, you called it an exciting Patriots win. I would agree that it was a Patriots win. I would agree that it was an exciting game. As someone who was desperately not wanting the Patriots to win, I would not put those two words together and call it an exciting Patriots win. That's just me.
All right, my bad. But before we jump into breaking down the Super Bowl itself, why don't you give us the gambling recap? And I hope you were able to pull together all the different games that happened and get the results.
It took a long time, but I pulled it all together. We had the first ever Pick'em Super Bowl. So the lines before the conference championship games, they predicted that Seattle would be, or actually not just predicted, you actually could get this in some sports books. You could have had the line of Seattle, I think, -3.5 at that time. And then they released the lines in the fourth quarter of the Patriots-Colts game. They released it as Seattle -2.5, and then it quickly fell from there. And of course, it got all the way to Milman as a 1.5 point favorite. As we got closer to game time, some money came out in Seattle and kicked off as a pick'em. Of course, obviously, Milman won the game, so they won against the spread, although it wasn't really a spread. And then the over-under finished at 47, which for a long time looked like the under would hit, considering that it was 0-0 at the end of the first quarter, 7-0 halfway through the second, and with 1 minute left in the first half, it was still a 7-7 game. So the under bettors were probably doing quite good, and yet it went over. So 52 points against the 47, and it went over.
Well, that's very interesting, the one game, and I agree. I was watching it and thought of the over-under. I'll be honest, I didn't have any money on over-under, but you finished the first quarter, and my first thought was, wow, this feels like an under game. And as you said, even with the second quarter rolling on, kept feeling like an under game. And you get through the third quarter, it's still 24-14. It's very possible you're not getting too many more scores out of the game. So the unders had to still feel like they had a good chance, but Patriots poured it on in the fourth quarter, got a couple scores out of it, and boom, as you said, we go over. Obviously, the Patriots win the favorite bet, the pick'em, and so two results there that, unfortunately for me, did not pay on either side since I didn't have either one. But speaking of more exciting bets, Mark, the prop results. Last week, I think we both gave our top 3 prop bets, so I think it's only fair that we recap how we did. I will start in the Hall of Shame and admit that I was only 1 of 3 on my top 3 prop bets. I had mentioned that I really liked Tom Brady's rushing yards to go over 1.5. I was going to get a plus 135 on that. Yeah, Tom Brady never actually ran the ball forward, so that clearly was going to make it difficult for him to gain yards. A couple kneel downs and a couple botched plays here and there, and suddenly he's a -3. Not great for me. We both liked Will LeGarrette-Blount score a touchdown. If you had told me the Patriots were going to get 4 touchdowns, I really would have liked this even more, especially a plus 190. But as we know, he did not score a touchdown. And then the only one I hit, Russell Wilson's first pass will be, I went with incomplete for the plus 150, and of course I was correct because Russell Wilson's first pass was incomplete. I just didn't anticipate, Mark, that his first pass, which was incomplete, and attempt, would be in the second quarter.
Yeah, it was pretty crazy that it took that long. I know that there was a few times where he tried to throw and wanted to throw in the first half, or the first quarter rather, and he was running around looking for a receiver and couldn't find one, and then he would either, run forward with it or run it out or something like that. But yeah, he tried to throw a couple times and just never found the opportunity to.
Yeah, he did, I think, have 2 dropbacks that were truly intended to be passes in the first quarter. you have to remember, New England had the ball first, did one first down, and then punted. Seattle did nothing. Then New England went on a long drive, capped by Brady's interception at the goal line, and then Seattle didn't do much again, and then New England had the ball. The first quarter's over. So yeah, it was a strange quarter for Russell Wilson, considering he did not attempt a pass. But I was correct. His first pass attempt did bounce off the turf. So yay to me, 1 of 3. How'd you do on your prop bets?
All right, so on the top 3 that I listed last week, obviously I missed the one that you mentioned. We both had one to score TD, and like you said, if you had told me going into it that the Patriots would score 4 TDs, I would have liked it even more so, but it was not to be. But my other 2 actually did both hit. So I said that the game would be tied after 0-0, and it actually was tied twice. It was tied at 7-7, and then tied again at 14-14. So that one actually hit twice, although it doesn't pay double or anything like that, unfortunately. But that one did hit. And then I also said Julian Edelman. I like some of these, the player props. We have one player versus the other. And this is one that I liked. It was Julian Edelman versus Luke Wilson. And if you took Edelman, you were giving 29.5 yards. So Edelman needed to finish with at least 30 yards more than Luke Wilson, which was quite easy, considering that Luke Wilson finished with 0 receptions, 0 targets for 0 yards. And Edelman had 109 yards on 9 receptions. So that one was money in the bank and a very easy hit.
So you're saying Luke Wilson versus Julian Edelman was very similar to you or me versus Julian Edelman.
Yes. Although the line for that probably would have been Edelman minus 85 or something like that, or whatever his official number was for the game. But yeah, that one hit. And then I wanted to mention a couple others as well that were popular on different podcasts that I'd listened to last week, and some that I'd seen on Twitter. There was a prop bet that would there be a penalty for roughing the passer? And a lot of people were saying yes. Turns out there was not. And then another one that people liked was a prop on the Pats converting a 4th down. And I kind of like that one as well. When talked about it makes sense. That's a very good fourth down team. And Belichick, being an aggressive coach, likes to go for it on 4th down quite a lot. But they never even really had the opportunity. They never even tried. So if you had done that, they would have lost.
The other ones I wanted to mention, Mark, the national anthem was longer than 2 minutes and 1 second. So thank you to Idina Menzel from, I think, Frozen and Wicked fame. So great job there on the over. Also, the first Tom Brady pass was a completion, and the first play from scrimmage of the game, you could actually call out from a number of different items. It was a pass completed, but not for a first down. So that actually was a favorable payout as well, if you had been able to pick that. I think the first play was that interesting 3-yard pass back to Gronkowski, and he ended up getting 1 yard out of it. So
yeah, you mentioned that. That's another one that Simmons and Cousin Sal had mentioned. There was a prop on Gronk's first catch plus or minus 9.5 yards, and they both said take down there. They thought that they would just be a short little pass to Gronkowski, and I remember that. Yeah, his first catch, which was for a yard or 2, it was a very small gain. So the under on that hit, and then you mentioned the national anthem. I don't know if you heard this. They actually, most sports books stopped taking money on that because they had so many maximum bets come in on the over on the day of the Super Bowl that they felt like there was something fishy going on, that someone had some inside information, like maybe Idina Menzel told all her friends, who told all their friends, who told all their friends, that she knew, she had rehearsed it a few times, and that would come in over. So sportsbook were, stopping to take money on that. And that's another thing I mentioned last week as far as these prop bets. It doesn't make sense on some of these where you could have inside information, or Katy Perry could say, here's what I'm wearing when I come out, so bet accordingly. It's just, and this was a prime example, and it actually happened.
You did mention that last week, and I will say I heard on Saturday they started doing some prop bet analysis, as you said you listened to this podcast, and the average national anthem had come in over the past decade at about 2 minutes 10 seconds, so it seemed a little longer. But like you, there could be inside information. Somebody hears the rehearsal, her rehearsal goes 2:20. You'd be thinking, it seems like she's going to go over. Now, granted, I know you've done this before, rehearsed a speech, rehearsed the lines of a play or something. People tend to go faster once the crowd's there. So, it's not completely guaranteed, but yeah, if she thought she was hitting 215 or 220, you're probably feeling really good about that. And you're right on the Katy Perry outfit. The bet was, will she show cleavage? I believe the winner was yes, and it was in her Teenage Dream song, I think, where she looked like a hot dog on a stick girl.
I saw a tweet that said some sports books were paying out all tickets on the cleavage bet because there was, cleavage gate was the hashtag that was trending because there was controversy on whether or not she did have cleavage. For all of her other outfits, there was not. But for that one, with the the sharks and the trees and dancing around in the swimsuits, you could kind of say that it was cleavage, but you could also kind of argue that it wasn't. And so some sports books, instead of trying to get into a technical definition on what constitutes cleavage, said, okay, we're just going to pay out all that, which is that was my hate last week. I hate these gray area bets on is that or is not cleavage, and that's exactly what these sports books, they walked into their own trap and having to pay out every single ticket on yes or no.
It's a beautiful trap to be in then if you're a fan of cleavage.
I guess so.
I will fall into that Katy Perry cleavage trap every time.
Good point.
Bad on me, I guess. So, all right, well, that's enough on the prop bets. Hopefully for those that listened last week, you followed Mark's betting more than mine. Maybe you found a few of your own that you really liked, but it's always interesting. And I will say hitting a couple of those makes the first few minutes of the game even that much more exciting. When you say Tom Brady's going to have a complete pass, but it's not for a first down on the first play, and you get it, you're excited, even though it was a meaningless play, really. So, good for that. But now let's, Mark, break down the game itself. And as I said at the top, exciting game, close game, much different than last year where we had the blowout. And really, it's kind of more in line with what we've seen in the last, I'd say, the 4 or 5 years. We've had some pretty close games, especially with the Patriots in them. They tend to be close. Remember a couple Giants wins were last-second wins for the Giants. Even if you go back to the Patriot wins, they were always by a field goal last second. So we should have anticipated a close game. Vegas did, put the pick'em on. Sure enough, we got a close game. First quarter, feeling each other out. There was just the one long drive by the Patriots that Brady gets picked at the goal line. It did tend to be a bigger play than most people think, probably, because at that point, Jeremy Lane intercepts it, runs it out. There are a couple times he almost gets tackled. He could have run out of bounds, could have just gone down. All of a sudden, he comes back a little, and then he makes a break, and he gets tackled and breaks his arm on the sideline. Had he just been tackled at the 10-yard line and not broken his arm, maybe they don't have that Simon character in later who's just, Brady is just picking on for the rest of the game. And I believe 3 of the touchdowns were against him during the game. So that was a huge play for both teams. You intercept Tom Brady and stop a touchdown, you feel really good. You lose your slot corner, you feel really bad. So that definitely impacted the game in more ways than one. But it kept the scoreless first quarter, as you had said. Seattle never really got anything going in the first quarter. They tried a couple runs with Lynch. They did a couple dropbacks, as you said before. Wilson apparently couldn't even think about throwing into coverage. The coverage was so good, and he just ran with it or just got out of bounds, avoiding hits. So Seattle's offense looked pretty stagnant. The Patriots were moving the ball a little better. And I have to say, when we got to the end of the first quarter, it's 0-0. My thoughts are, while New England looks like they're outplaying Seattle, I guess Seattle should just be happy they're still tied. So there's my first quarter recap, Mark. So what do you think?
Yeah, no, I think that's pretty accurate. New England was moving the ball fairly well, and I think the Jeremy Lane play, didn't really realize it at the time as much, but I think that had a huge impact on the game. And looking back, I almost wonder if they would have been better off if it had just slipped through his hands or deflected it off his hands and went out of bounds. The Patriots at that point, I think, would have been 4th and 6 or 4th and 7 or something like that. And they probably would have kicked the field goal and been up 3-0. I think if they could go back and do it over, I think Seattle would take that. They would happily give up the 3 points and be able to keep Jeremy Lane and not have to go to Harold Simon. By the way, you said a Simon character. We have to mention his first name, Harold. Tharold. I'm going to go out on a limb and say that's the first Harold that has ever played in the NFL.
And the first Tharold to be severely picked on by Tom Brady for most of a Super Bowl. So I'm going out on that one.
Yeah, he picked on them for a lot the rest of the game. There was at least a couple of touchdowns that were against Harold Simon. So I think if they could go back, they would happily give up those 3 points to be able to keep Jeremy Lane.
Or just have Lane go down. I mean, if you knew that was going to happen, it's like you intercepted it, you ran it back to the 10-yard line instead of trying to get those extra 5 yards. Just, you go down, everybody's happy, we got the ball at the 10, we're good.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, that's even better. But even if they had the choice of, give up 3 points and keep him or get the interception and lose him for the rest of the game, I tend to think that they would choose to give up the 3 points and keep him, but who knows.
All right, and so, Mark, that leads us to the second quarter. So we end the first quarter 0-0. Patriots have moved the ball a little better. Seattle's offense has done nothing. I don't even know if the receivers were running routes or if they were just standing still because you could never see them because they were just covered completely by New England. So second quarter starts. Why don't you take us through what you saw in the second quarter?
Yeah, so first quarter we had 0 points combined, and in the second quarter we had 28 points combined. New England got on the board first. They had a 65-yard drive that was ended in a 11-yard pass to Brandon LaSalle, and then Seattle had a 70-yard drive ending in a Marshawn Lynch 3-yard run. That set it up at 7-7 with 2:16 to go in the first half. At that point, you're thinking, okay, it's probably going to end as a 7-7 in the first half, or they want to get the ball, maybe they'll, be able to go down and get a field goal, be 10-7 at the half. New England gets the ball. They go on an 8-play, 80-yard drive in a $1.45, ending in a 22-yard pass to Rob Gronkowski, which was just, you can tell that, Brady wanted to go to him. The play was designed for him. He was on, it was KJ Wright that was defending him, and single coverage with him, linebacker on Gronk. Brady placed it right where he needed to, got the easy touchdown for Gronkowski. And then that came with 31 seconds left. So you're thinking, okay, it's going to be 14-7. New England at halftime. New England kicks off, goes into the end zone. So now Seattle has the ball at their own 25 with 31 seconds. And I think either 2 or 3 of their timeouts. Their first play, they do a run play to Turbin. It's probably, they're probably going to get a couple of yards, and maybe they'll just, at that point, take a knee after that. He busts it for 19 yards. So at this point, they're now up to the 44-yard line. They're thinking, okay, we have a chance. I think they probably took a timeout after that play. Then they got, I think, 10 to 15-yard pass, and then on the next play, they had a pass to Lockett that got them down to the 20-yard line, 21-yard line, except Kyle Arrington did a face mask, which then added 15 yards, which got them down to the 6-yard line. So if they, and there's 6 seconds on the clock, if not for that face mask, the 6 seconds at the 21-yard line, they probably just take the field goal, and then it's 14-10. But being down at the 6-yard line, Pete Carroll decided to go for it. I questioned it a little bit. With 6 seconds, it's kind of right on the border. With 7 seconds, you'd feel, okay, you probably have time to run one play. 6 seconds, a little bit of a risk if anything happens that you don't get a chance to do the field goal, but they had a good play. Chris Matthews leaped up over the defender with a 6'5" frame, caught the touchdown, and 14-14 and a half.
Yeah, like you, I thought 6 seconds it was tight, but I did think they'll drop a play, and it's going to be one of those where Russell Wilson, they called a timeout before that. They bring him over and they say, you take 3 steps. When your third step, when your back foot hits, you're throwing the ball. Don't even think. Just throw the ball. And they did, and it was, as you said, a great play, great design. It wasn't a pure fade. It was more of a bullet on a line where Matthews runs in the end zone, turns at the goal line and jumps, but it really is more of a bullet than a fade over the DB. And for whatever reason, that DB just kept backpedaling and let him stay in front of him to catch the ball. So it was very, very odd defense there with 6 seconds left. But I will say, quite an exciting quarter, as you described there. 2 scores by each team. When the Patriots drove down a second time in the game, this time getting the touchdown instead of the interception, I was feeling, wow, this could get out of hand because Seattle has not proven they could move the ball at all. They got the ball back, responded, get their touchdown. Lynch went in the end zone. May have done a profane gesture. I don't know. I've heard differing reports on those things. Apparently, gestures and end zone celebrations were a big focus of this Super Bowl. Then, as you said, the Patriots come down in that last 2 minutes. The good news, as someone rooting for the Seahawks in the game, was as the Patriots were driving in, I'm thinking at least Seattle gets the ball first, because this is one of those rare games where Seattle won the toss and deferred. So they were going to get the ball first. New England loves to do that as well. And it turned out to work in Seattle's favor because they not only got the ball back with 30 seconds left and scored, but they got the ball to start the third quarter. And similar to what we've seen Denver with Peyton, we've seen New England with Tom Brady, they like to double up the scores. You score at the end of the half, you score to start the second half, and you kind of demoralize a team. So exciting quarter all around. Seattle finally got the offense going a little, mainly through Chris Matthews, as you said. I, of course, thought he was the guy from CNBC's Hardball show, I think it is. Did not know prior to the recovery of the onside kick that he was in the NFL, to be honest. So good for him. Had a nice game, had a good quarter there, a couple big catches and the touchdown got them going. So we end the half at 14-14. And then we go into an awesome halftime with Katy Perry and Lenny Kravitz and Misdemeanor Elliott, and we'll break that down later. But on to the third quarter. After, what do you think, was it a 35-minute break? It seemed pretty long.
It was a long time.
It seemed like a really long halftime because they came back, they do the halftime analysis. Then they go to some more commercials because you have to make those, $4.5 million 30-second pops or whatever it was. Then you come back and you do another round of analysis or something else, and then some more commercials, then Katy Perry, and then you come back, and obviously you have to have time to set up and take down. There are more commercials. So really long break, and that is something I think Super Bowl teams, it can be a problem for, and I will say the Patriots hadn't been there a few years, and some of these players had never been there. The Seahawks were there last year. Maybe they were better prepared for it because to start the third quarter, Seattle, as I said, gets the ball, they come out, and in the third quarter, it's more of a continuation of Seattle's play from the second quarter. They're able to move the ball still, some Marshawn Lynch running, some good passes from Russell Wilson, a couple of runs from Wilson. They're still hitting Matthews. They find Curse and Lockett a little more. And they do get a drive down, and they get a touchdown to Doug Baldwin, which results in a unsportsmanlike conduct penalty for his celebration. Again, celebrations being a key focus. They also had a field goal drive in the quarter. So you have 2 scores by Seattle. I'm feeling at that point they're up 10. Things are rolling. New England's not able to move the ball all of a sudden. Brady got hit a couple times in the quarter. He had one pass. I wouldn't have been surprised. I think the announcers even said you could consider it grounding. He dropped back. A little pressure's coming at him, and he basically bounced it 5 yards past the line of scrimmage, but he's not out of the pocket, and there is nobody anywhere near the middle of the field. It's like, oh, I'm not getting hit, and he threw it down. I think it was a third down anyway, so it didn't matter that much, but Seattle finally started getting to him, and it looked like, wow, Seattle's got this going their way. They get up 24-14. New England, again, hadn't moved the ball that well in the third quarter. Seattle's offense was clicking a little better. They did have a chance, though. They got the ball back one time, I think in the third, maybe it was third into fourth, where they didn't move the ball then. And you would have, if you could have done anything with the ball, as you have a 10-point lead and you get the ball back, as you start rolling, if you could just get one more score, I think the game would have been over, but Seattle couldn't do it. And we went to the fourth quarter with Seattle ahead 24-14. So in your square pool magic mark, the 4s were a good pick for that quarter.
Well, not only that, but they doubled up because halftime was 14-14, and then the only scoring in the third quarter was 10 points by Seattle, so it was still 24-14, which, you use the second digit, so it's still 4-4. So whoever won the halftime square also won the third quarter score.
Yes, and so hopefully they followed your tried and true magic formula for winning squares pools, and maybe they got 4-4, or maybe they got 5-8 because it's completely random, and your theory was it was complete.
My theory worked.
It was complete rubbish. But back to the third quarter. Thought it was a pretty good quarter for Seattle. What were your thoughts as we saw Lynch getting going a little more and Richard Sherman mocking Darrelle Revis after Doug Baldwin scored on Darrelle Revis? So that Richard Sherman was like, "Did you see? It was 24 he scored on." Any thoughts to the third quarter?
Yeah, I didn't pick up on it right at first. I knew that, Seattle, with that touchdown, had 24 points, and he kept saying 2-4, 2-4. I'm like, yeah, you have 24 points. We know. What's so magical about that number? Then, yes, Darrelle Revis is number 24. So the interesting part was Doug Baldwin scored a 3-yard touchdown, which, by the way, was his only catch of the game because he was on Revis Island. And speaking of, we talked about props earlier, there were some other props involving Doug Baldwin. I think his over-under on yards for the game were 45 or something like that. And came some other props where it was, him versus someone else on the Patriots that he ran that left out or something. And people were, saying, take anything, take the under on Baldwin yards, and that certainly came to pass with just 3 yards. But a big 3 yards, because it was a touchdown, as he used a umpire in the end zone, basically as a pick to set him free. So, hey, whatever works. But then he incurs the 15-yard unsportsmanlike penalty for pretending to pull down his pants and pretend that football, like he's taking a crap on the field. So, not quite sure what he's thinking when there's, cameras all around him and referees staring at him, and decides to cost his team. That was pretty stupid, especially for a Stanford guy. But not quite sure what he was thinking there. And then the fourth quarter, the Patriots, they got handed Tom Brady. They had 2 long drives. They had 2 drives of 60 yards or more, each one with 9 or more plays. Each one took 4 or more minutes off the clock. In total, the 2 drives took up about 9 minutes, and Brady was 13 out of 15 on those 2 drives. Weren't many long throws. Well, I guess pretty much the whole night it was a lot of short throws, and then letting Vereen and Elvin kind of do the work from there. Edelman had 9 catches. Vereen had 11. So 11 catches for 64 yards. So less than 6 yards a pop, but it was working. They were dinking and dunking their way down the field. And then pretty much the only thing we need to talk about in the fourth quarter is Seattle's last drive. They're down 4. They matriculate down the field fairly quickly, especially when they had the 30 or 40 some yard pass that was that Curse that caught that on his back?
It was
Curse.
Curse.
It was Curse, right?
Well, first there was the 30-yard pass up the sideline to Marshawn Lynch.
To Lynch. And then his one catch of the game.
Yes, his one catch, and then the 35 or so yard pass to Curse, which the moment it happened, I believe I texted you and I said something like Tyree, Manningham, Curse ? Because you could see Tom Brady. He was thinking.
Yes.
And he even admitted it now. He's like, "Oh my God, I'm cursed. Every time I take a lead in the fourth quarter, some crazy play happens and they pull a miraculous catch out and beat me." That it went through his mind. I'm glad he admitted it. And you and I thought the same thing.
I had the same thoughts, and when I was amazed, because at first I thought it was incomplete because there wasn't a great camera angle, and then when I saw the referees kind of just standing there and the Seattle players walking down towards the end zone, I'm like, oh my God, he caught the ball. And you see the slow-mo replay, and you're saying, holy crap. But yeah, the first thing I thought of was, well, this is surely a sign that Seattle's going to win because of, Tyree, Manningham, and now this. They were all miraculous fourth quarter receptions that led to, at least I was hoping in this case, a victory for the team that was playing the Patriots. And of course, the play that is going to be, debated for the entire offseason probably, if not longer. So Seattle has first and goal at the 4.5, 5 yard line. They give it to Lynch. he gets down to right around the 1, if not inside the 1. And another play that no one's talking about is Hightower tripped him up just enough to get him down at the 1, because it looked like, if you go back and watch that play, it looks like he's going to get in, and then all of a sudden he goes down. So now at this point you have 2nd and goal from the 1-yard line, about 1:05 left, and if you're Seattle, you have 1 timeout. The crazy thing here that is getting discussed a little bit, but not as much as it should be, Belichick chooses not to call a timeout. I was even wondering is he at the point where he's going to just let Seattle score so that he can have a minute left? But he did nothing. He stood on the sideline.
I wondered, didn't the announcers even mention that too? Like because in the Giants game they had done something like that.
Yep.
So that they could get Tom Brady the ball back. And in this case, it would be only down by a field goal. So Tom Brady wouldn't even have to drive the length of the field for a touchdown. He'd just have to get Gostkowski into field goal range. So with 1:05 left, I thought the same thing you did. I'm like, well, we're gonna see timeouts here from New England because they got to preserve time now. And yet they didn't.
The difference in the Giants game, though, when they let Bradshaw score, New England was only ahead by 2. So if they don't let Bradshaw score, then the Giants are just going to get a clock and then wait till there's 2 seconds left and then kick a chip shot field goal for a 1-point win. So that's a case where he knew that he had to let him score to get the ball back. Whereas in this case, they're up by 4, so a field goal for Seattle does them no good. So he knows he just has to keep them at the end zone. Now, he gave a few explanations for what he was thinking. Personally, I think there's a decent chance, despite the fact that he is, one of the 5 greatest coaches in NFL history. You can argue whether he's, 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. But I think there was a little bit of a stun factor. Like, they kind of was thinking they probably had the game won, and that miraculous catch by Curse. I think there was a little, possibility for a little bit of a deer in the headlights. Like, what is happening here?
I agree. I actually thought the same thing because he's such a good coach that if you look at the odds, playing the percentages, Seattle with the ball at the 1-yard line with Marshawn Lynch in the backfield, 3 plays at it with a timeout left, the odds are in their favor of scoring a touchdown. So if you're Belichick, you know these things, you'd be saving time and thinking, well, I got to preserve time to give Tom Brady a chance. Especially when you had all 3 left. I mean, taking one of them preserves some time, and if they score the next play, fine. You still have 2 timeouts for Brady's drive. But, I think you're right. I think it was just a momentary shock that catch was good. He's probably waiting to hear from his guys upstairs after the catch, like, was that good? Was that good? And they're like, yeah, it was good. And then the next play, you see Marshawn Lynch rumbling off the left side. Looks like he's almost in the end zone. I think in his mind, he's like, oh, my gosh, we are about to lose another Super Bowl.
Yeah, no, I think that was a decent part of it because, strategy says that he should have called a timeout there. There's no reason not to. Obviously, Seattle is thinking the same thing because when Lynch ran that play, there was 1:05 left. They didn't run the next play until about 26 seconds on the clock. Like, they let pretty much the full clock go down. Like, they're trying to bleed clock. They don't want to give Brady back the ball, which is a little bit odd to me. Like, if their touchdown is going to put them ahead by 1 or 2, then you have to be a little bit worried because you don't want to give Brady the ball and the chance to go down and get a field goal to win the game. But in this case, the touchdown's going to put you ahead by 3. You know that New England at that point is just going to be worried about a field goal. They're not going to, obviously, they would want a touchdown, of course, if it happens, if they break free, but their goal and their intent when they're going on the field with that little bit of time left is, hey, let's get a field goal and try to go to overtime. That's your worst-case scenario, basically, if you're Seattle at that point. So I think they were a little bit too concerned with letting too much time roll off after that first Lynch run. And then they had 1 timeout left, and then we get the play call that, of course, will be debated. It's 2nd and 1. They run. They do a pass. They do the pick play. They do the inside slant. Butler recognizes it, jumps in front of Lockett, catches the ball, intercepts it, game over. Now, I as well thought that, okay, you have beast mode. Why are you not running the ball? And truth be told, they probably should have. But it's not nearly as bad as everyone is making it out to be because, of course, in this, Twitterized world where you have to have instant reactions and call something the greatest ever or the worst ever, and people are saying it's the worst ever, but that's hindsight. That's 2020 hindsight. That's full in effect here because of what happened. You know, if the play had resulted in a touchdown, nobody whatsoever would be questioning it. Instead, everyone was talking about the fact that Belichick didn't take a timeout. And there were some stats today, I don't know if you saw them in any of the articles, but over the course of this season, there were 332 plays from the 1 yard line. 109 of those were throws, and 61% of them resulted in touchdowns. 223 of those plays were runs, and 58% of those resulted in touchdowns. So you're actually more likely to get a touchdown passing from the one than running from the one.
Well, I would say if you're Seattle, that might not be true because, as you said, you have beast mode in the backfield, and your identity is running the ball. It's not throwing quick slants. Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, yes, they throwing the quick slant. They probably score more that way than running. But come on, be honest. Those stats are skewed because it's the entire league.
No, I agree with you, and that actually was my next point, is that you have beast mode. You have one of the, say, top 5 running backs in football, and the Patriots were actually one of the, in the bottom 7 or 8 in the league as far as short yardage run defense. And so when you have strength against weakness, obviously you should do that. And there's, Carolyn says a few things about he ran the pass there because he said something to the effect that he ran a pass play there because he would have been fine with an incomplete, and then he would have 3rd and goal from the 1 and still have 1 timeout, at which point he could run or pass on 3rd down. The Patriots wouldn't know, and he could run 2 times from there if he wanted to, because he could run on 3rd down, and if he got stuffed, he could use the timeout and then run again on 4th down. So
yeah, I have to say his explanation was kind of shoddy and kind of rambling. Now, granted, it was some of it was right after the game. There were more today, but I also wonder, did he really make that call, or was he covering for his offensive coordinator who called a good game up to that point? I guess called as good a game as you can with that limited offense because they don't really have great weapons on the outside. But I felt like he said a lot of things but didn't really say anything. The words were there, but nothing really meant anything. And I almost felt like he was covering, or he, similar to what we said about Belichick, he was a little in shock because we got down to the 1 yard line. We have 30 seconds left. We're a yard from winning back-to-back Super Bowls. And it's against the franchise that fired me. That had to mean something.
Yeah, it did. And, yeah, I think he fell on the sword for Darrell Bevell. I think Darrell Bevell called the play, and, he said afterwards that, he fully supported it and was okay with it. But I think he's not throwing his offensive coordinator under the bus. There's actually a conspiracy theory that came out today because, of course, we need to have a conspiracy theory for everything. And the conspiracy theory was that instead of running ball and getting the touchdown with Lynch, Lynch, he has 1 year left on his contract, but he's talked about retiring, and there's been questions on whether he would be back next year or whether Seattle would want him back next year. They have 2 young running backs on the roster. Maybe that they're a little bit tired of Marshawn Lynch's antics. And he has this, young QB, Russell Wilson, that he loves, and he's going to be the future of the franchise and be there for the next 10 years. So the conspiracy theory said that, if he had given the ball to Lynch for the rushing touchdown, it would have been Lynch's 2nd touchdown, and he had over 100 yards. And Marshawn Lynch probably would have been the MVP of the Super Bowl. But by going to the pass play, if Wilson could have completed the pass, then it would be more likely that Wilson would have been the Super Bowl MVP. Personally, I don't put a whole lot of stock into it, but it is floating out there now.
I don't put much stock in it either, but I do agree with your point. If Lynch scores that, you give it to him on 2nd down and he rumbles in and they win the game, he is the MVP. No question about it. If Wilson completes that pass, probably is the MVP.
Yeah, it swings on that play, for sure.
So I believe the outcome is correct in that analysis, but I don't know that entered into the thinking of the play callers at that moment in time. They may have probably been thinking more, what's going to work here to win us a Super Bowl? Although I did hear the aliens came down also and and it got in their ear, and that's what hurt. And Belichick, he had a radio operator dial up their frequency and call that pass play. So there's some conspiracy theories for you.
That is a little too far out there. I'm hoping that you're making all this up.
I just made all that up on the spot.
Okay, good. I will say, I'm going to pat myself on the back here a little bit. I called this in our podcast, I think even a couple weeks ago, when I talked about the chain of heartbreaking loss theory. How Detroit had a heartbreaking loss to Dallas, who had a heartbreaking loss to Green Bay, who had a heartbreaking loss to Seattle. And I said, would that continue into the Super Bowl? And sure enough, it did. They had about as heartbreaking a loss as you can get because they had, second and goal from the 1 yard line with beast mode and did not, they threw the interception to lose. So the heartbreaking, dominoes continued throughout now in the off season, and maybe the heartbreaking loss theory can still continue with Deflategate. Maybe now New England loses a draft pick, or Brady or Belichick gets suspended for the first few games of next season, or something. But maybe the domino hasn't completely ended yet.
Interesting theory, but you did mention that. We were hoping that since it was just an NFC role, that maybe when it was NFC, AFC, it would not happen, but it did happen, and in about as heartbreaking of a way as it could. So
it was. And
sad finish for Seattle.
And my Super Bowl prediction, if people want to go back and listen to last week's podcast, I was so close. I predicted, and I wrote this down, I predicted that Seattle would win 31-27. If they had scored there, if they had called a beast mode run like they probably should have, they would have won 31-28, so I've been 1 point off. And conversely, I predicted that the game would end on an interception in the end zone. Now, I said it was the other way. I predicted that Seattle would be ahead 31-27. New England would be driving. They're down by 4, so they can't kick a field goal, so they're going for the end zone. And that Sherman would pick off Brady. But I was correct that the game ended on the interception in the end zone.
Well, it didn't truly end, but it was over, yes.
Yes.
There was just enough time left for Bruce Irvin to get in a fight, Gronkowski to slap somebody's helmet. I'll never understand football players when they do the fighting. They swing at helmeted players. Doesn't make a lot of sense because that helmet's going to hurt. Now, Gronk, he's crazy, so maybe it doesn't hurt him. But it did seem, as always, like a silly football fight. You may as well just have people out there doing a little slap fighting because that's all that amounts to. But it was sad that they, from a bettor's perspective, I did think of this when the Patriots got the ball on about the half-yard line there and set up in the victory formation. They were going to take a kneel down, and you were going to figure, okay, Brady's going to try and squirt him forward, but Seattle's going to be ripping at the ball and everything. There was a chance for a safety until the offside. And then if you get a safety, that's obviously a defensive score or a safety, which different bets there, but there were bets on would there be a safety in the game. That would have made some bettors happy, I'm sure.
Well, and that's another thing. We haven't discussed this yet, but do you think that they were planning on taking an intentional safety because, and Bennett made a stupid play and went over the line, and then they got, out to the 6-yard line, and they didn't have to worry about it because they had room to kneel down. But before that, with the ball at the 1 yard line, you don't want to take the chance of, you mentioned Brady trying to squirm forward. If it were to get knocked out, Seattle could basically knock it out, recover the fumble, win a touchdown, which would be probably the most heartbreaking possible way to lose a Super Bowl for the Patriots. Get the interception, think that you've won, and then, get it batted out of Brady's hands and Seahawks recover the fumble and win the game on that. That would have just been insane. I think the internet probably would have broken last night if that happened. So because of that possibility, do you think that they would have maybe had Brady, step back, run around, as long as possible to take some time off the clock and then step out of the back of the end zone?
It didn't look like it because they did have the two protectors behind him, so I don't think it was going to be a run around. I think they were going to do a hike and just dive at the bottom of the pile, but make sure you're outside the goal line. But again, it would have been more interesting than Bennett making the bad play, although he had had a great game up to then. So, and again, it probably isn't going to happen anyway, so I'm not going to put any blame on him. Would have been a little more exciting finish, but that's a great Super Bowl, close competitive game, back and forth, ebbs and flows. interesting coaching decisions. So I thought all in all, didn't love the outcome with the team winning that I didn't want to win, but great game for everything else.
Overall, a great game, and maybe in a future podcast we can kind of discuss where this ranks. It's definitely up there as far as one of the better ones. One of my favorite parts afterwards when Dan Patrick was interviewing Gronkowski, and he said, "Gronk, had you forgotten what this feels like?" Well, Dan, Gronk was 15 years old the last time the Patriots won a Super Bowl. I'm guessing he wasn't on the team as a 15-year-old. So, no, he hasn't forgotten what this feels like because he's never been on a winning Super Bowl team before.
And here I was thinking I was the only one that noticed that he said that, thinking, did he mean have you forgotten what this feels like playing in the Super Bowl? Because no, he's played in a Super Bowl, kind of injured in the last one. But if he meant winning a Super Bowl, well, yeah, he can't forget something that he never experienced. Maybe he meant winning a big game, because it had been 2 weeks since they won a big game. Good job by Dan Patrick. So hopefully he really didn't hear much about that over Twitter, I'm sure. But I agree, we can rank this in a later podcast, but I'll just throw down the gauntlet right now, Mark. I just checked Twitter. Greatest game ever.
Well, I'm sure of that. In today's Twitter world, everything, the most recent has to be either the best of all time or the worst of all time with nothing in between. So.
Yes. Pete Carroll, worst coach of all time, by the way. I'm sorry to say, but I just read that. Gronkowski, greatest weapon ever. Says so right here on Twitter.
Well, if it's on Twitter, it must be true.
Agreed. But Mark,
before we move on,
I need to move on because there's something else I need to talk about from the weekend. But go ahead.
Well, no, I'm done with the Super Bowl. I'm done with the game aspect of the Super Bowl. We need to talk about dynasties, though, and I'm not talking about the Patriots. Anheuser-Busch has now won 3 straight admitted titles and 13 of the last 15. Now that is a dynasty.
I really have nothing to add there.
Well, I did. So I looked at the rankings. So they have a panel on USA Today that ranks all 61 commercials. And I looked at the results, and I have a couple of observations. One, the Kim Kardashian commercial, I feel bad for society. It really should have been ranked last. It should have been ranked 61 out of 61, so I'm a little bit worried that it was not. But I do feel happy that it was 59 out of 61, so it was about as close as possible. But I will say, from looking at these rankings, I'm pretty sure the panel was mostly women. And I'm going to say this because the Kate Upton commercial was 57 out of 61. The Victoria's Secret commercial was 50 out of 61. And the number 2 commercial was the Like a Girl commercial, which I did like, and it would be in my top 5. But based on those 3 results, it just seems kind of obvious. And I will say some quick comments right here. The 2 commercials that I think were vastly underrated were the first draft ever commercial, the avocado commercial. I don't know if you saw that one. That one came in 23rd. Feels like it should have been higher. And the Skittles commercial wasn't great, but it was kind of funny. It finished in the middle of the pack at 29. So I think those were a little bit underrated by the esteemed panel.
And the reason I said I have nothing to add there is you just mentioned it's an esteemed panel. We don't know who they are. USA Today picked some random people. I don't care about their rankings, honestly. I'll give my own ranking in my mind, and when I'm watching, I look around the room when I'm at the Super Bowl party and see, did people laugh at a commercial, or if it wasn't funny, if it was supposed to be serious, did they take it in, or did they at the end of it go, wait, that was a car commercial? Because if their reaction was, wait, what was that for? Then it probably wasn't effective use of your millions of dollars.
Sure.
So I'll use my own unscientific panel as opposed to the unscientific panel provided by USA Today. Thank you. So I'm not accepting your dynasty argument there because I disagree with the rankings.
Well, no matter who the panel, 13 out of 50, that's still pretty amazing.
That's a gray area. Agree to disagree.
It's true.
But Mark, there was something else that happened over the weekend besides the football game and the commercials, and it was the Hall of Fame announcement. And as always, players were elected to the Hall of Fame. It's not a baseball Hall of Fame where you get 0 players elected as a statement against steroids. No, it's the Football Hall of Fame, and they always put people in. In fact, they almost always put full classes in because there actually are a ton of qualified candidates right now that are coming through. So I know you have a few stats around the Hall of Fame and some information, so why don't you give us a quick breakdown of what we saw from our Hall of Fame voting, and we'll just quickly roll through that as most people have probably already seen the results and have their own thoughts formulated.
I think there's some solid results. They had a full class of 5 as far as players. The Veterans Committee put in Nick Tinkelhoff. Don't know anything about him. He was clearly before my time, but I do know that he played 17 years and never missed a single game, preseason, regular season, or postseason, and was all pro many times. So sounds like he definitely deserves to be in. I know Peter King has long been advocating for him to get in. And then they broke out a special kind of contributors category that they're going to rotate over the next few years because they realized that the voting committee almost always first put in a player over GM. So Ron Wolf and Bill Polian got in as the second and third GMs into the Hall of Fame. And then we had a full class of 5. I don't have it in front of me. I know it was Bettis, Shield, Tim Brown, Haley, and who am I forgetting? There's one more.
Yes, there was one more because it was a full class of 5, Mark. You just mentioned that.
It was. I know. I don't have it in front of me. We'll think of it. But the next one I had was, so they narrowed down the class, they narrowed down to 15 and then 10 and then 5. So the next 5, the 5 that were in the 10 that did not make it in, who you would think would have a good chance for next year's class, we had Tony Dungy, Marvin Harrison, Kevin Green, Orlando Pace, and Kurt Warner. Oh, and Junior Seau, just remembered, Junior Seau was the other player. And then so you had those 5 players that were in the next 5 that didn't make it in. And then newly eligible for 2016, you had Brett Favre, Terrell Owens, Alan Faneca, Clinton Portis, Darren Sharper. Of those, I would say Brett Favre is clearly a first ballot Hall of Famer. Terrell Owens has the stats, but there's been a long jam at wide receiver. For example, Marvin Harrison now for 2 straight years has not gotten in. He's probably going to get in next year. So maybe receivers had to wait for a while. Chris Carter had to wait. Tim Brown had to wait for a long time. He got in this year. I think Marvin Harrison probably gets in next year. It wasn't too long of a wait, but he had to wait a little bit. Terrell Owens maybe gets in a year, in 2017 or 18, something like that. So I think next year we'll see Brett Favre, Marvin Harrison, Kevin Green, and then the other 2 will be either Pace, Warner, or Dungy. And then the other interesting stat that was mentioned in Peter King's column this morning, we've now gone, and this is, I don't know to believe it, we've now gone 9 straight Hall of Fame classes without a QB, which obviously will be broken next year with Brett Favre, but still, that's a long time.
True, a long time, but also, I guess, when you think about the QBs that may have retired in a certain era, you don't just put any QB in, you put the greats in. So, yeah, Brett Favre will break that next year for sure. You're right on that. And I do think the other thing about T.O. that you didn't mention, relationship with the media, rightly or wrongly, does impact the voting. So I could imagine there are a few media members that didn't love T.O.'s shtick and probably would hold him out a year or two as that's our spiteful revenge. Show him who the boss is, because writers are the boss, not you players. So, yeah, I don't see him getting in his first year, and I agree with you. I think Harrison will probably be ahead of him. They got to clean up this logjam at receiver. I mean, didn't it take years, as you said, for Andre Reed as well? Wasn't he on the list for quite a long time?
Another one. Andre Reed was a long time. Chris Carter for a while, and then Tim Brown had to wait quite a long time until this year.
Yeah, so I think maybe Harrison next year, and then we'll see what happens. But there are very qualified candidates, so it'll be interesting to see how this progresses over the next couple of years. I'm not sure I loved that contributors thing. I know getting Ron Wolf and Bill Polian was nice, but I don't know. At the end of the day, GMs maybe they only should have one or something. Two GMs in 1 year, and yet coaches are still lumped in with the players. So GMs are somehow lumped into the special category, but coaches aren't. But Don Coryell, who was eligible and didn't make it, he kind of revolutionized passing. That's kind of more important, I think, than having a good eye to draft or trade for Brett Favre, for Ron Wolf's argument. You didn't know Brett Favre was going to be good, but you thought he would be good. Oh, it turns out your coaches might have made him good too. So it seems odd to me that coaches are with players, but GMs are in their own category and are automatically going to get in. So, whatever. But great for the guys that got in. I actually thought Bettis might have gotten in last year. He got in this year, so Haley with his 5 rings. Pretty impressive class. And obviously out here in San Diego, Junior Seau getting in. A lot of publicity around that. He was a great defensive player, heart and soul of many defenses. Never failed to have energy out on the field. So obviously the tragic end wasn't what you would hope for, but yeah, he definitely another guy that you'd look at and say Hall of Famer. So I have no qualms with the class, and I think next year we'll also have another great class. I think for the next 4 or 5 years we might have great classes, just knowing some of the names that are rolling through in the next few years.
Yeah, for sure. There was a list on some site I saw today that listed all the players that are going to be eligible over 16, 17, 18, and 19, and definitely quite a few good players coming up.
Yes. So we will revisit that at a different date, probably next year at this time, and see who got in and who got snubbed. But that wraps up the weekend for me. I didn't want to get in too much to Media Day and how much excitement I thought that was and any of the other. I'm just kidding on that, by the way.
Yes.
So, again, great Super Bowl weekend. Hall of Fame class announced. The game itself was a competitive, compelling game for a change. So, I think nothing that happened that we were not happy about other than the outcome. So, kudos to the NFL, highest rated television show ever. And what more could you ask from a weekend, right?
What's that?
What more could you ask from a Super Bowl weekend? So,
Yeah.
great for the NFL. And now we'll move on, because the NFL never sleeps. We'll move on into the offseason. I believe tomorrow free agency will start, and the draft's 3 days from now. And the schedule. No, wait, I'm just kidding. They do this all over months and months, so they can own every calendar month. But there will be.
Yeah, they own the calendar.
There will be a focus shifting now from, the Patriots. Hey, great, congratulations. Super Bowl odds are already out for next year, and we'll start looking towards the combine, the draft, free agency. So the excitement never ends. With that, Mark, though, I do want to move on to our other segments. One of those is the On the Spot segment. And this week, I'm going to ask you 3 questions, put you on the spot, as it were. I know you haven't prepared for these, so just give your first answer. A couple of them are definitely football related, and then one is a little less football related this week. So, I want you to give me the best Super Bowl quarterbacks ever, your top 3. The reason I say that is because after last night, and again, we are in a Twitter world, but this one may not be just because of Twitter, Tom Brady is being touted as the greatest Super Bowl quarterback ever. Also maybe the greatest quarterback ever, but that's not what I asked. Best Super Bowl quarterbacks ever. So give me your top 3 Super Bowl quarterbacks.
All right. Off the top of my head, without being able to see a list of, QB records in the Super Bowl, top 3, well, Montana is 4-0. Bradshaw is 4-0. He was before my time, so I never really saw him play, but 4-0 is 4-0, though obviously a lot of that was the, steel curtain defense and Franco Harris, and clearly did not have the numbers of today's quarterbacks, but still, 4-0 is 4-0. So Bradshaw, Montana, and Brady's now 4-2, and, they're the only 3 quarterbacks that have 4 Super Bowl wins. I'm trying to think beyond that. I mean, Elway, I guess, played in 5, but went 2-3 in those 5. Manning's played in 3, but he's unfortunately 1-2 in those 3. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to think who else. I mean, Bart Starr won the first 2, so he's 2-0. I think you almost have to go with Brady, Montana, and Bradshaw, unless there's anyone I'm forgetting.
No, and I don't want to argue against that. I think you hit 3 that are great to put in a top 3. Some people might argue against Bradshaw. His stats didn't compare to some of the modern day, and they might argue Elway over him because Elway did have some great stats in games, even if his team's lost. I know your thoughts on Aikman not being one of the greatest QBs ever. He did win when he did win when he got to the Super Bowl. So if you're going with Bradshaw, you should have mentioned Aikman in there before you mentioned people like Peyton Manning. Manning's never going to be in the discussion. He's 1-2 in Super Bowls, and his stats, even in the win, weren't that good. And obviously, in last year's loss, were not great either. So Peyton's not in. Eli's 2-0, but his stats have never been great. So I think you hit it right off the bat there. Those 3, and now Brady is in the conversation. He, as a Super Bowl quarterback, has been in 6. He's won 4. Only 2 other guys can even claim that. Nobody else can claim to be in 6. And his stats have gotten progressively better. This Super Bowl, a Super Bowl record for completions. He had those drives, 4 touchdown passes. He has passed Joe Montana for the most touchdown passes in the postseason. So I think kudos to you for addressing that correctly and getting the 3 names in there that probably deserve to be discussed. So we'll move on to our second question. It's kind of tied to the Super Bowl. So Seattle won the Super Bowl, then had a heartbreaking loss this year. So what are Seattle's chances to get back to the Super Bowl?
Pretty good, because I think most of the team is going to return intact. Most of the defense should be there, although we're seeing that there's going to be some surgeries going on. They've already said that Cole Thomas might need shoulder surgery. Chancellor is injured. I don't think it's anything too serious, but they're saying that Richard Sherman's going to have Tommy John surgery. I haven't seen anything saying how long he's going to be out. Now, with pitchers, they're usually out a full year or more. Now, I understand it's a little bit different on pitchers using that arm to throw a baseball, 95 miles an hour, whereas, Richard Sherman is not doing that. But he still needs his arm to make tackles. So, I don't know that he'll be out, the full year. Obviously, if he's out a full year like pitchers are, then he's out all of next season. Now, I don't think that's going to be the case because I haven't seen anything stating as such, but assuming they have most of the defense back, they're obviously going to have to, Wilson is now eligible for a contract extension. He's not going anywhere. No, I think he only makes like $500,000 now. After his new contract, he's probably going to be making north of $20 million per season. Obviously, when a player goes from $500,000 to $20 million, then there's a salary cap in the NFL. So by giving him more money, it's got to come from other positions. So that's going to wean the team a little bit. They need a receiver very badly, as we've seen in the Super Bowl. Jermaine Kearse, he's okay. Doug Baldwin, not bad. Lockett, he's just a guy. Chris Matthews obviously had a good game in the Super Bowl, but he's been a journeyman. He's been kind of bouncing around for I think 4 years now. He was an undrafted free agent out of Kentucky in 2011. So, and this is the first time he's even caught a pass in the NFL. Obviously, he's got some skills. He's got size. He's 6'5", but I don't think he's the next answer at wide receiver for Seattle. So they need some help there for sure, especially after getting rid of Chris Yard. But the question kind of comes down to running back. Beast mode, there was a lot of speculation at the beginning of the season and during the season that he would not be back next year. Now the recent reports are saying that they've offered him a contract extension. So if he's back, they get a wide receiver in the draft. Russell Wilson is obviously back. Assuming that Thomas and Sherman are back healthy, they're going to be right up there. And Vegas agrees. They're already the favorites for next year's Super Bowl. I think they're 5-1, 6-1, something like that. So they'll be right in the. They'll definitely be right up there in one of the top NFC teams.
Probably right. Vegas definitely agrees with you. And I think Pete Carroll's quote on Richard Sherman's surgery was when someone asked him if he'd miss, a year to 18 months like a pitcher, he said, well, only if he's going to become a late game reliever for us. So I think Pete's at least optimistic. I think somewhere I saw floated, and we'll have to double check this, something like 9 months. So if that's the case, you figure we're at February, that would still put him out part of the season.
Yeah.
So maybe he's one of those guys who'll put a big Barry Bonds style brace on his elbow and get out there and play one-armed for a month of the season. Who knows? But it definitely could have an impact. So it'll be interesting to see. But thank you for the quick on-the-spot analysis there. And now, the third and most important question. What was your favorite commercial from the Super Bowl?
My favorite commercial, I'm going to pull up the results here real quick just to kind of jog my memory. The one that won the unofficial USA Today ad beater was the puppy and the Clydesdales. I thought it was okay. It didn't,
Lame.
Yeah, it wasn't. I think actually I'm looking through this list here. I think the one I liked the best was the Doritos commercial, where the guy is sitting on an aisle and there's an empty seat, there's a middle seat between them, and he's seeing all these people that are boarding that he does not want to sit next to him, and so he's pretending to read a book about IBS, and he's cutting his fingernails, and he's playing the recorder, and doing every obnoxious thing possible that he can to not let the person sit next to him. And then he sees this super hot chick, pulls out his bag of Doritos, like, hey, sit next to me, we'll have a party here. And then, she catches his eye. And then, of course, the fact that there was someone sitting in front of her, and you get to see that, she had she was holding a baby in front of her. So I thought that one was good just because you didn't know exactly where it was going and had a good payoff at the end.
All right. Fair enough. You go for the simple humor. That's good. I mean, simpleton that you are.
Yeah, that's me.
No, I will say, on a broader view of that, didn't think there were a ton of great commercials.
That's what I said. It was a down year. It was a down year.
I feel there have been years where I'd come away and there'd be 3 or 4 that really stuck with me that I thought, wow, and they weren't just good, they were great. Some would be, the commercials that would spawn multiple years worth of commercials, the Budweiser frogs and some of the Pepsi commercials from back in the day. These would be continuation commercials. This year, I just kind of felt like they were commercials. There were a lot of cars, a lot of nationwides, and a lot of things that just didn't play as well as I thought they would. So, I'll be honest, I'm actually surprised that Budweiser one you mentioned with the dog and the horses actually is rated the top commercial. It's just okay. So, down year. But I'm glad you at least still fall for the simpleton humor of a guy wanting a hot chick to sit next to him on an airplane. So, good.
It was relatable. What can I say?
There you go. All right, well, that was our on the spot for the week. Great job tackling those. Next week, next podcast, you can ask me 3 questions related to anything. Hopefully, not the Super Bowl commercials. So let's move on.
Okay.
Yeah, at this point, we'll move on to another one of our great segments. It's the oft imitated, never duplicated, Hef's hate. So, Mark, what do you hate this week?
This week, I hate a comment that I saw in Peter King's NMQB column this morning. And he made a comment about the Pats are so close to actually being 6-0 in their last 6 Super Bowls. To that, I say, Peter, shut the hell up. If you're going to say they're so close to being 6-0, you also have to mention that they're also pretty darn close to being 0-6 or 1-5 or 2-4. Let's face it. The 6 Super Bowl margins for the Patriots in order: 3, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4. Okay? So the 4 that they won were by 3, 3, 3, and 4. By my math, that's 13 points. They've won 4 Super Bowls by less than 2 touchdowns combined. Now, obviously, with that small of a margin, one play here or there, a key turnover, a field goal made or missed, like any one of those games could have swung. Yes, they could have easily won both games that they lost. We've talked about the miracle Tyree and Manningham catches. They also could have fairly easily lost any of the 4 games that they won, including obviously the one yesterday when Seattle could have just given the ball to Lynch and won the game. So I hate the fact that he's trying to say, "Oh, look how close they are to going 6-0." Peter, you can't just say one side of the story that fits your narrative. You also have to mention, hey, they, realistically are not that far away from being 1-5 in those 6 Super Bowls, and they're making jokes comparing the Patriots to the Buffalo Bills. So that is this week's FC.
That was a great use of the half save mark. I'm very proud of you. And you're right. Think back to the first Super Bowl they won. They're playing the greatest show on turf. They actually drives them down for a late field goal. But he had a horrible game. I think he had 120-some yards passing for the game. So clearly a drop pass or a deflected ball or one, bad spot probably could have turned that game. So that would have easily stopped their dynasty before it got started. And then Peter King would be talking about how, you're right, they're the Buffalo Bills. So good use of your hate this week. So we'll move on from that, though, because we need to get away from the hate and get back to the love. And we're going to move to Miller's Minute, although I'm going to disappoint all those that are looking for love, because this is almost a hate. It's actually more of a question. So obviously the halftime show last night, amazing. Katy Perry came out and there was a movable lion, and there were, my favorite, there were shark dancers and palm trees. It was very strange, and I guess for someone in California, I'm supposed to relate to it. So it was great. What floored me is Katy Perry announced that she had a special guest for the Super Bowl halftime show. And that special guest, Mark, was
Missy Elliott.
Lenny Kravitz. You may or may not remember she announced Lenny Kravitz was her special guest. He came out and gets his guitar going. He riffs on his guitar, and he does about half of I Kissed a Girl, and he's gone. No American Woman, no any Lenny Kravitz song. He doesn't even get to touch on anything else. He does part of a song. Missy Misdemeanor Elliott, unannounced, comes out and does like 3 songs. Really? You have Lenny Kravitz, a great musician, and that's what you get out of him? You get him basically to be a ploy so that Katy Perry can sing I Kissed a Girl, because it's a little edgy if she's up there by herself singing I Kissed a Girl, but with a guy up there, it's okay to sing I Kissed a Girl. I don't know if a lot of people caught on to that. I actually predicted that that's what Lenny Kravitz was going to come out and do, and the people at my Super Bowl party were impressed that I basically saw through the ruse and knew the reason you bring a guy out is so she can sing her song. But if she sings it without a guy, it's not going to go over so well with her kissing a girl and liking it, at least on a Super Bowl telecast where they're trying to be more politically correct these days. No Janet Jackson here. So, highly disappointed that you have a talent like Lenny Kravitz and you basically used him as a prop for half a song. Very disappointed in Katy Perry for that. Missy Misdemeanor Elliott, pretty impressive that she came out and got her freak on. That was a nice surprise, but 3 songs? A little much, I think. So that was great for Katy Perry. I guess she has friends in all areas of the music industry, so good for her. But if you're going to announce Lenny Kravitz as your special guest, you better frickin' feature Lenny Kravitz for more than half a song. Enough said.
Well, we'll say, she'd announced Kravitz a while back, but I thought that on the day before, on Saturday, she said that Missy Elliott was going to be her quote-unquote surprise guest. Then I remember seeing tweets saying, well, how's it a surprise if you're telling us?
Yeah, you're right, but they announced, it was the big announcement, Lenny Kravitz, the weekend of the championship games, so 2 weeks ago, and you used him for 3 minutes. Really? This is Lenny effing Kravitz.
Well, and then I have a follow-up question. So you mentioned that she came out on a lion, and most of the tweets that I'm seeing say that she came out on a lion. Do we know that was a lion? Because the song definitively says, "I've got the eye of the tiger."
It does say that.
Why would she be out on a lion?
It does say the eye of a tiger, a fighter, champion. You're going to hear her roar. I think it's because lions roar. Honestly.
I'm sticking to tiger.
That's all.
I may be the only
that's all I've
one.
got.
I'm saying she was on a tiger.
That's all I've got is because a lion roars. Tigers growl, don't they? We call it when a tiger does something, they're growling, but a lion roars.
Actually, that structure was so ambiguous and undefined. I'm going to say that she came out on a wombat, and that's my story. And I'm sticking to it.
It could have been a giraffe, a golden giraffe. Who knows? The lion. Although I think she may have stolen that prop from the Lion King musical, and if she did, then it's probably a lion.
This could be possible. I'm sticking with wombat.
Nice. Rhinoceros. Duck-billed platypus. That is my final answer.
There was no horn and there was no beak-like thingy of a platypus. So.
Oh, maybe there was, and they just didn't do a good job of showing it to you. Who knows? We'll never know the answer, Mark. All right, that's enough talk of strange and mysterious items in the halftime show with dancing sharks and palm trees and lion, tiger, wombat items. But great job, Katy Perry. At least it was more entertaining than like 80-year-old men like Paul McCartney up there, so good. At least we're moving in the right direction. But with that, Mark, I think we have touched on all the topics for tonight. I did want to give everyone a heads up out there. We won't be doing weekly podcasts, but keep coming back to steelscorpionsports.com. Check out our blogs page. We will be posting podcasts probably every couple weeks because, as we said earlier, the NFL season doesn't end at the Super Bowl. The off season begins at the Super Bowl. So we'll have some previews coming up of free agency, the draft. We're going to start posting our mock drafts on the website, so check those out as well. We'll also be analyzing some of the over-unders when they come out. We'll predict some other fun items for the upcoming season. And obviously, as we get closer, once free agency and the draft are done, we'll really dive into the fantasy implications of all of that and get you ready for your fantasy season, which we know is why you really come here. So, again, check us out, steelscorpionsports.com, a better species of fantasy football. You can look at our leagues page, read about our rules, and see why we think we're a better species of fantasy football with the mulligan, the multiplier, and the all-play format. If you look at it, try us out this year. I think you'll find that we are a more fun way to play fantasy football, and your skill is rewarded. So with that, Mark, I am completely out of ideas for the podcast for tonight, so anything you want to add before we close?
Yeah, just one comment. I'm gonna come clean here to you and our listeners. For the mock drafts, we're going to be taking turns writing mock drafts, and we're going to be, predicting how we think it's going to shake out. I'm going to come clean right now. For 31 of the 32 picks, I will do my best to predict who I think that team is going to take. As a Colts fan, my bias will probably come through, and I will probably predict, or I'll probably put who I want them to take, and hope that by some miracle it somehow makes its way to Ryan Grigson, and he reads it and is like, this makes sense. This is right. We really do need this player. Whoever decided to be. So, just letting you know now, letting everyone know now that I will be unbiased for 31 of the 32, but some bias might creep in for that 29th pick of the first round.
Well, that's a great disclaimer. I, as a Colt fan, will not be biased. I'm going to put who I think they will take. I'm not going to come up with some convoluted reason why they will take the player that I like best, which you will do. So at least we have that on the table.
Yes.
I may put down Lenny Kravitz, though, just to give him some more respect.
Okay.
Maybe he'll be my compensation round pick. Lenny Kravitz. Boom.
What position would he play for the Colts?
Guitarist.
I was not aware of that spot on the roster, but...
Well, it's a new formation. They just picked up Belichick's working on it right now, in fact, after the Super Bowl, incorporating a guitarist into the formation.
Does he play to distract the opposing team?
It could be anything. You don't know. I mean, is he getting the ball and he's going to wield his guitar as, an axe and get you? Or is he just going to sit there and wail on it and you're just staring over him like, why is Lenny Kravitz on the field? And then, boom, you just missed the play going the other way.
Now, if he's just staying on the field playing guitar, is he considered like a defensive receiver, or can he be tackled?
What depends is he's probably going to be declared ineligible on most plays. So there you go.
All right.
But you still have to, if you're the Ravens, you still might want to cover him and get an autograph or something.
I can't wait to read your first draft and see your logic and reasoning behind this.
It will floor you. So definitely come back, check us out, watch for these mock drafts coming up. We'll start posting those in the weeks to come, and we'll get you prepared for free agency, the draft, and then your fantasy drafts. With that, I'm going to sign off from San Diego. This is Jeff Miller.
Signing off from San Jose, it's Mark Huffman.
We'll talk to you later, sports fans.